Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collingwood for YouTube, Resident underslash of underslash Collingwood for BitChute. And I'm here to give my review for the new Ghost in the Shell series on Netflix. What did I think of this? The one thing I had emphasized, I know me and Mark did when we were doing our first discussion, we did Dark Shadows and Ghost in the Shell. We had talked both products, and I know we emphasized new characters. Ghost in the Shell introduces a couple new characters and then throws one away, and really they don't invest enough time into new characters. This is a reboot in a way disguised as a sequel. The Ghost in the Shell 2045 show is, set years after the events of part two and somewhat of Solid State Society. I think they're really retconning Solid State Society in some sort of way because they don't really acknowledge it. They more acknowledge the second, like, more events that happened in an indirect way from the first two seasons of the original series, the series that aired on Adult Swim. And they do have a new antagonist. They actually have a couple because the CIA is sort of involved. And I didn't really like that angle, but I get why they did it. The CGI in this is half good and the other half is garbage. The brain diving looks awful. I more wish the creators would have kept the format they used on Adult Swim or even on the Sci-Fi Channel when they did Solid State Society. That format seemed to work better for this series. I wish they would have introduced not just new characters, which they did, but keep them around, make them the primary focus. To me, the Major should have been more of a background character. She's more faded into the back. Look at, I know Solid State Society was more of a retelling of the original film in a sense, but what Solid State Society told me was the Major was unsure if she ever really wanted to come back to Section 9 or not. She just wasn't sure. And I think that's how her character just should have been, a background character. She's there, but you don't see her. And that's something they should have did. They should have more focused on the newer characters. They should have built new characters first and focused on them. For me, what did I want this to be? I wanted this to be about the recruits, the new recruits, the recruits they had in season 2. I wanted their story to be told. We got a bit of that, and very little of that in Solid State Society with some new recruits, but not completely. Again, I wish they would have did this more in 2045 because you're doing this in a series. Now, could they switch the course? They could, but I don't think they will. I think they really need to focus on new characters. My hope is, I'm not saying they should reboot the franchise because that would just be detrimental to what you're trying to do now. But I think the one thing they need to do is switch the format back because the format just looks awful at times. It just does not do well. The action in this is good, but saying the action is good in a Ghost in a Shell series or even a movie, it's like saying action's good in the Terminator movie. That's a no-brainer, right? So my focus here is the story itself. Is the story good? The story's interesting is what I'll say. I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's interesting. It had my attention, but then again, that's the only thing that was keeping my attention. And once you get past that, where are you taking this series? Where are you taking this franchise? That's the biggest question that the new series on Netflix really leaves you with. where is this really going? Because to me, it's going nowhere. Even with their new story, just 13 episodes in, and I think there's only 12 or 13 episodes. But at the bottom line of this, there's no real course direction for it. There's no real Section Nine's reason for getting back is wishy washy. You know what I mean? It's not the greatest thing. And to me, Section 9 should have never really been disbanded. What were they disbanded over? Again, it's a reboot disguised as a sequel. In Solid State Society, they weren't disbanded. Even by the end of the two, they weren't really disbanding. The Major sort of was going her own way. And that's something this series could have touched on further, as her having as a background character that Bato would have never stopped talking about the Major. He was Richard Epcar, he said it. He feels that Bato was in love with her. And I agree with him 1000%. And I still hope at the bottom line of this, they get Richard Epcar and Mary Elizabeth McGlynn to come back and voice these characters. But I want them to fix the animation, though, too. I want them to sort of fix this story before they do, because I don't feel even them coming back would do these characters justice right now. I do think they need to, again, do this better. I hate to give a bad review to this series, which I love this series. I love Ghost in the Shell, but I have to give it what it is. It's a 4.5 out of 10. It's not great. It's watchable, is what I'll say, even with the bad CGI. But it's just not the greatest thing they could have brought to you, and that's the one thing that hurts the most as a fan. I don't want to see a bad product. And I'm saying this is for what they did. It's not completely horrible, but it's bad enough to you really need to fix a lot of things, because there's no real long-term direction. And that's something Ghost in a Shell, even with the end of season 2, I was left asking questions. With this, my only question was, okay, what's your long-term plan? At the end of season 2, my biggest question was, okay, what are you going to do with the new recruits? Because they had a ton of them in season 2. They introduced some. Number 2, how is Bato going to feel about the Major leaving? Because you could tell the Major was going to leave Section 9 by the end of season 2. You could see it. The writing was on the wall. And, what is his sort of state of mind? And Togusa is sort of the new leader. They did this somewhat in Solid State Society very well. But again, the focus needs to be on the newer characters as much as it does some of the older ones that are already established. Again, you need to establish new, build them, but keep the old ones in the story somewhat. So again, I hate to give a bad review, 4 out of 10, but yeah, I'm gonna be honest. It just doesn't sit well with me. Am I gonna go own this? No, I'm not buying this one, because it just did not sit well with me. I'm not gonna buy a bad product. You know what I mean? Despite being a fan, I'm not gonna sit there and spend money on a product that literally made me shake my head and go, "Come on, you could have did so much better with this." The trailer was good. But the action, look, I've said this with action movies. Yes, I love action movies, but give me a story with your action. Tell me something. There was somewhat of a story here to be told, but but just barely enough to keep me interested. And that's something in a Ghost in a Shell story I don't want. The Laughing Man was interesting. Kuze was interesting. The one thing they could have really touched upon more in this series, the one thing they got away from, really, the core value of it, other than the technology is somewhat there, but again, the bad CGI ruins it. They got away from really the noir too much. There was not enough of it. And I feel something Ghost in the Shell has always had of its core value is the noir. And that's something they really got away from in this series here. So sorry to give a bad review, but that's my review. 4 out of 10. Wow. And now I'm going to talk about Ghost in the Shell some more. Alright, guys. Like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.